Well, all right. Welcome, everybody. It is 7:05 on Tuesday, September 30th, 2025. Pete, welcome, brother. We got the Ten-Four Tavern up and running tonight.
We do. The taps are open, man, and we got a special guest. The weather's starting to turn here in Northern Virginia, so I figured I'd bring some of the heat up here, and we invited Jorge Colina from Miami up. Great guy. It's funny, I met George towards the end of my time in Florida. I didn't get a chance to really work with him. I was getting transitioned out of Florida to headquarters, and I was invited to the changing of the chief ceremony at the Miami Police Department, and Jorge Colina was coming in replacing George Yanis, who was his predecessor. And the older chief was a good guy, good friend, a good ally to us, but he was kind of set in his ways, a little bit more shut down, not a big tech guy. He was more like me, raised in the era of the IBM Selectric typewriter. And so George came in and kind of laid out his expectations day one about what he expected, about adopting new technologies, about interagency cooperation. And I was like, holy shit, this guy's the kind of guy I want to work with. So I was kind of pissed off. I was honored to meet George and have some conversation and a little bit of overlap with him, but at the same time, kind of pissed off that I was going to headquarters and didn't really get to work with him. But we've since crossed paths a couple times since then, dealing with some tobacco-related stuff. And cop's cop, man. So I'm just happy to have him here.
Nice. What year was this, Pete? I'm sorry.
Well, I left Miami. It was 2018. So
okay.
That's when I first crossed paths with George. But look, I had a lot of interaction with the city of Miami, Miami-Dade, Miami Beach, because every time we had a fugitive that fled the Bronx, they always, for some reason, went down to Florida, which was great for me, man, because I got to stay in. For example, on one case, a retired lieutenant named Donald Pagani, retired detective, son of a lieutenant named Donald Pagani, was killed in Hunts Point. And the suspects fled to South Beach. And I wound up staying at the Fontainebleau Hilton for $45 a night for 9 nights on the manhunt, and got to work with all of these Miami guys. And it was great, man. The cops down there don't play. And I'll tell you what, one more plug for the Miami PD. During the Summer of Love, when most police departments had their tails tucked between their legs, when people misbehaved in Miami, they were held to account. The police department did its job the way cops do their job. Yeah. So I have a deep respect for the Miami PD.
I appreciate that.
Well, introduce your chief.
Yeah, George, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate being on with you guys. It's a treat for me, and I'm flattered that you asked me to join the show. It was great. Well, just a couple things that Pete brought up. So, when I became the chief, that I was being sworn in, I didn't realize that when you get sworn in, at least here in South Florida, maybe it's different in different parts of the country. You basically go up and you say a few, pleasantries, that kind of thing. You raise your hand, you take an oath, and people clap, and then you go and celebrate. I gave like a whole, this is what we're going to do, right? So I didn't realize that it's more of a ceremonial thing for me. It was, well, I'm going to lay out what the plan is, and I'm going to put it out in the universe, because I kind of want to be held to it, and I want everyone to know this is, what we're going to endeavor to. And I wanted everyone to be invited. I wanted to have a really good working relationship with all the federal partners. In Miami, it seems like the majority of the most violent crime is committed by a small percentage of people. Mm-hmm. And so I always thought, man, we have to have a great relationship with our federal partners because, 99% of the time, that's the biggest hammer. That's the biggest hammer. So not only did I invite Pete to the swearing in, but then back to the office just to get a little bit more granular on what we can do together. And, and that was awesome. And then during the protest, Pete, you brought that up. Man, I communicated with the public all the time, right? And I wanted to be really crystal clear of, hey, you have an absolute right to protest. And we're going to protect you while you go out and protest. And that's your job. That's your job. We're happy to do it. Now, if you're going to break the law, right? If you're going to commit a crime, you're going to smash somebody's storefront, that has nothing to do with social justice, right? So
Right.
We're going to arrest you if you do that. I told everybody up front, we have cameras everywhere. So even if we didn't get you tonight, I promise you, we have a task force whose job is going to be to review video from every angle every day, and we're going to identify you, and we're going to come and get you. You're going to pay sooner or later. And honestly, I think most people listened. And I also explained, please don't let these people disrupt your right to go out and peacefully protest. This is America. It's what makes us great. And if you got some pinhead next to you that wants to throw bricks or whatever the case may be, they're the ones that are screwing it up for you, not us. We got to come in and do our job now. They caused us coming in and stopping it because they broke the law, and we have to hold them accountable.
Yeah. But I remember watching like footage from all over the country, and in a lot of places the cops are just getting peppered, and just like it bothered me, man, because I was a cop back in the days when policing was a full contact sport. You know, I've used force, never unjustifiably, but the only place I actually saw the cops like doing what cops do in the camera footage I saw was in the city of Miami. So I was literally sitting here applauding, like, holy shit, look, this is great. So, you know, again, you said what you had to say, but your cops followed suit and they did the right thing. And none of it was excessive. But I tell you what, for an old time copper like me to watch, it was fucking magnificent.
Man, and we had a bicycle response team, and these guys were out there every day. I had to make a deal with them for them to go home and rest, because they were like, we're staying. As long as this shit keeps going on, we're going to stay. I was like, hey, right now things are calm. Please go home and rest. I want you to use your best judgment and be as sharp as you can. You need rest for that. And if some shit breaks out, I'll call you. I promise. But go home and rest, right? Take the day off and then come back ready to keep going. But that was their level of dedication. And it was pretty remarkable. I was very proud of the work that the officers did. It was a bad time because it was that combination of COVID and protests, right?
Yeah.
So those things, and having so many people together, the stress of protests, COVID, man, I asked the officers, please come to work, right? The public needs you. They need to see you. They need to feel normal. Part of that is seeing cops in the street doing their job. Please come to work. And can you believe that we've had days where there'd be one person, no one, an agency our size, that called in sick to work? Everybody came. Everybody came. It just took saying, hey, please, it's for these reasons. It's an important time for you to show up. Please come to work. Please come to work. And they came. Right. They came.
Yeah, great to hear, and that's really impressive, Chief. But let's not forget, we are in the tavern. So
come on.
You're already indulging. Pete, what are you drinking tonight? High West Bourbon. What's going on?
I have a little bit of High West Bourbon, as you just so eloquently pointed out. And I just cracked the bottle open. It's very smooth. It has a nice note to it. And I just cheers, man. Honored to have my friend George here and to be with you, Tommy, and the rest of our listeners.
Into a great conversation tonight. We'll get into your career. I'm drinking Responder Bourbon. No plug, but it was sent to me by the Chief Kevin Barrett of Terre Haute, Indiana. He's got his own line. He does a red bottle for firemen. See the red bottle? He does blue for cops, and he does black for special ops. And he sends me a fireman's.
It's a slap in the face, Tommy. It's the rivalry.
So thanks, Chief Kevin Barrett in Terre Haute, Indiana. Chief, what are you drinking? Blanton Urban. I forgot the B. I got a typo on the thing on the menu, but
I'm drinking Blanton. I'm treating myself, right? So this is a nice bourbon. I knew I was joining you guys, and I thought I'm gonna treat myself. So I got myself some Blantons here.
Yeah, so we got a comment. Ron Layson, a leader with integrity, wants accountability. We could use some of that in the NYPD these days. And then Terry Murnane follows up 100% inspector. So I think leadership will probably weave itself into our conversation tonight for sure. Ron, good troops follow good leaders. So let's get into this. Chief, why don't you walk us through, where'd you grow up? How did you your young formative years and then end up in the police department?
And so I was born in Weehawken, New Jersey, right? So right across the Hudson there, on the other side of the Lincoln Tunnel. My parents divorced, and my mom and the four of us, I got two brothers and a sister. We moved to South Florida when I was little. So I grew up down here. I never really thought about law enforcement. I really enjoy history. I thought maybe I would be an attorney. I was a terrible student, by the way. So it wasn't challenging. It wasn't because it was challenging. It was because, I just didn't like school. So, being an attorney, those two things don't go, right? You got to be able to go to school. So I did go to college, and while I was there, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And my girlfriend at the time is the one that asked me, my wife, we've been married for 30 plus years, 33 years. We've been together for close to 40. She's really the one that said, honey, what is it that you think you'd like to do? Like, what would make you happy? And I really never thought about it that way. I always thought in terms of what would, pay me well? How would I make a good living? What would be impressive to tell people? Oh, I'm going to study this. I'm going to be that. I never really thought about it in terms of what would make me happy. When I gave it thought, I told her, man, I think I'd really like to be a policeman. That seems really cool to me. I would love an opportunity to go out. Chasing bad guys sounds like a lot of fun. And I think I would enjoy that. And I think I'd do a good job of it. And then that was that, well, let's do it. And I went and started applying, and that's how it started.
So what year was this, Chief?
1989 is when I got into the police academy, graduated 1990. That was the first day. That picture there, Tom, believe it or not, I know it doesn't even look like me. That was the day that I went for pre-orientation, right? The very first day there, when they start explaining this is the shit you're going to do, and then you're going to go to the academy, and blah, 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 blah. That was that day. I was completely, lost in space.
I think we all were.
100%. Yeah. I did not know what was coming.
So after you went to the academy, George, where'd you start your career on patrol? Like, what was it like down there? A lot of our listeners are NYPD, so they might not understand the dynamics of the Miami PD, even though you did inherit quite a few NYPD guys down there.
We actually had a lot of NYPD guys that would come down, join Miami. A lot of New Yorkers that were transplants that joined the police department, and it didn't matter how long they were in Miami, they were still always New Yorkers, right? They were already more time in South Florida, but they were always New Yorkers to this day, and a great relationship. But yeah, I got out of the academy, and they sent me to the midnight shift in Overtown, which is, it was a high crime area, very violent. And man, I'm not going to lie, it was pretty intimidating, right? It took a little bit. I had not seen that level of violence. I had seen shit on television, right? I had not seen, right away there's calls that are, violent. Beep, emergency tone, shots fired, person shot, person stabbed. That was all the first night. And I remember coming home thinking, wow, I hope I made the right decision here, because this is a lot more than I thought it was. But really, really soon, I came on probably like you guys. We had a lot of the veteran policemen were Vietnam veterans. Mm-hmm. A lot of guys that served in Vietnam got into police work. They were the veteran cops. Really, really quick. I had a lot of cops that were like, hey, let me speak to you about this. Hey, let me teach you about that. Let me show you how to handle this here. This is how you stay safe. And it didn't take long for me to realize this is in fact the job for me. This is fun. I love it. It's dangerous as hell, but it's exciting, right? You feel alive, and catching bad guys was, quite the adrenaline rush.
Sure is.
In New York in the 80s and 90s, the early 90s, those were particularly violent times for New York City. There were other times. Well, how was it down in Miami in the 80s and 90s comparably?
I know super violent.
Yeah.
Yeah, very violent. You know, crack was exploding. Heroin was still popular, but crack was really exploding. And we had a lot of mini gangs, right? So loosely organized. It was, you know, the 13 core cowboys, you know, that kind of shit. Um, and they would be feuding with the guys on the block over. And when I say feuding, I don't mean, you know, they get into a fight. No, they're shooting at each other all the time. You had the Colombian cartels that were coming in and trying to take over everything. And the spraying, Pete. So this is when I first started, someone right by themselves would get shot in the corner. But really soon, I think maybe a year or two in, it transitioned to there could be 10 people in the corner. We're going to spray the whole corner, even though we really only want to hit you. But right. If other people were there, fuck it. You know, they're getting shot too.
Yeah.
And that was wild to see that, because that was, you know, seeing 250 casings on the street, you know, that wasn't the way it was when I started. It wasn't like that prior to that. You'd have a little bit more targeted. There's a beef. Somebody's going to shoot somebody. It's going to happen. But it was a little bit more controlled. Shit just went crazy in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. So you had to do a little community policing.
Yeah. So what's funny is that's in Coconut Grove, which is a nice area. This is what they call the historic West Grove, which is a lot of Bahamian settled there. And they sent me there. I was an officer in our special investigations. They said, hey, everybody's going to be drafted for a month and we're going to put you on a beat. And I was like, but I don't understand. Am I not doing a good job? Yeah, but it the rules apply to everybody. And, your number was called and you're going to put a uniform on again and you're going to walk a beat. You're not going to have to answer calls for service, but you're going to walk a beat. And okay, well, what is it exactly that I'm supposed to be doing? Just be there with the community. Okay. So I show up there, I'm, up and down the street, walking around, chit-chatting. And then these guys were like, hey, you want to play dominoes? I was like, sure. This looks like it fits in, right, with what they asked me to do. And I'm not even sure who took that picture, to be honest with you. But there we were playing dominoes, doing a little community policing before they called it that.
Yeah. George, let me ask you this. Like when I talk to people about my career, housing cops, we most of us walked foot posts at some point in our careers. I did it for a while by choice. And when I look back at the 35 years I spent in the profession, that's the time I think, if you ask me what would I like to do again, it was that. What was your take on walking a beat in Florida? I mean, with similar experience down there, was a little bit different. Would you do it again?
I would do it again. And what I didn't know, right? Like every job that I eventually had that I always thought that's a bunch of bullshit. Those guys do nothing. That's a scam unit, right? I always thought that about all these other jobs until I went and worked there. And then I would think, wow, this is a lot more involved than I thought.
Yeah.
This is a lot more work than I anticipated. And that's just what happens when you're ignorant to what people do, right? So I didn't realize that I was going to enjoy that the way, I resisted it. I thought this isn't police work. And that wasn't the case at all. It was quite the opposite. It was very much police work, and getting to know the folks that live there was awesome. And them telling me, how they appreciated me being there and how I would sit and bullshit with them. Man, I felt like not only was I making the neighborhood safer, which is 100% my job, right? So not only did I feel that way, I also felt like I was making it safer for the other cops because they were getting to know me, right, as a person. So if you're getting to know me as a person and you see that I'm just out there trying to do a good job, maybe you'll see other policemen that way, and we minimize the chance for there to be a flashpoint. So I felt like I was achieving a lot of things by being there. It was quite fulfilling for me.
Yeah, I wish more departments would go back to that. So what was the next step for you after that, after being in that unit for a while?
And I went back to narcotics. I worked narcotics for a long time. I started off as a buyer, a street buyer. That was the craziest job I ever had, and probably the most dangerous. That was nuts. I can't even believe I did that. But I did that for a little bit, and then I went to to mid-level narcotics, and then eventually I worked smuggling cases. But that street buying, Pete, I go to the street narcotics unit. I was part of that unit that was during that time, till they disbanded us. This was the last time they disbanded us. We had, I don't know, unfortunately, we had 7 or so team members that were indicted. And so they disbanded us for the last time. I was a buyer in that unit, right? I wasn't a jump out. They called them the jump out boys.
Right.
And those were the tactical guys that would do the takedowns. I bought dope. I was very fortunate because my first day there was this officer who was, one of those guys that always argued about everything and was a little bit of a rule breaker. And, he always bitched about the agency. But man, for me, I lucked out with this guy because he said, "Hey, you're gonna come work with me." I didn't know him really at the time. And he told me right away, listen, these people, he meant the staff, right? These people, all they care about is stats. You're a buyer. You feel something in your stomach. You pull up to a corner. You don't like the way it feels. Just say some bullshit and drive off and tell them that it was a no-go or that they're out or whatever. Don't put yourself in a position where your gut's telling you this is no good. Make sure that you keep your gun under your thigh. Always keep your foot on the brake. Don't put the car in park. When you pull up, don't put it in park. That way, if you got to, DD out of there, you take your foot off the brake, haul ass, your gun, you can put suppression fire down if you have to, have 2 radios, one on the tactical channel, one on the working channel in case some shit goes sideways, the whole world is going to come, have the radios here. I mean, it was tip after tip after tip that quite frankly, I felt like a lot of it helped keep me alive. And then he had all these other tips like, listen, if you're going to do a walk-up buy, wait a few minutes, see if there's a prostitute going to go by, walk with her. They're going to definitely serve you if you're with her. Have the money in your hand because they get tunnel vision on the money and they want to do the transaction quickly. Wave at someone. They're going to wave back, right? Because that's what people do instinctively. The seller's going to see that and they're going to think that you've been there before. Right. Have a can of beer, have a cigarette. They're always going to ask you for your short or a smoke. All these tips, and they all worked. So that detective was great. He was a hard ass. He was great.
I'm going to say a comment. I've never seen that photograph before, George, but I will tell you from what I saw, the criminals in South Florida have access to far more sophisticated firearms than we generally saw in the Bronx. I see 2 actual Uzis, which are very high-end, well-made Israeli firearms. I see an FN rifle. I see you holding a belt-fed rifle. That would have been front page of the New York Post if we made that seizure in the Bronx. We usually ran into Haskells and Lawsons. If somebody had a Glock, they were king of the street. So yeah, that's pretty nice.
This is the segment where Pete brags about his gun knowledge right now. So yeah.
No, I'm envious.
Come on, we're in the tavern. I'm going to break some shoes here.
I'm an aficionado of a fine firearm. I'm not going to lie, but I would like to purchase some of those myself. But yeah, that's
Pete, I thought you were only the A and the T, not the F.
No, all 3. I like alcohol. I smoke cigars, as George knows, and I also indulge in the occasional firearms purchase. Lawfully, of course.
So, Chief, I think this is a perfect segue before we get into some other stages of your career. Tell us how really wild Miami was. I have a friend who worked in a federal agency. It was INS before the restructure. And he said, South Florida, the boats up the canals, just pick a boat. Pick a boat. Talk to us about and tell us how wild it really was in South Florida.
Man, so I think because of the location of South Florida, right? Just because of our proximity to the Caribbean, to South America, because there's so many different cultures, so many different kinds of people, it's so easy to kind of come and blend in. But I think because of how we are stationed geographically made us a natural hub for people to bring drugs, guns, or anything else. So sometimes those guns aren't necessarily intended for our bad guys, right? Maybe from there they were going to go to, different places. But it made it dangerous, and it was a haven for rips, right? One doper ripping off another, always very violent. That complicated life for us, because if we were going to do a takedown and we're in plain clothes, we always worried that the bad guys are going to think we're another group of bad guys. Because if we're another group of bad guys, they're shooting. If they know we're cops, most of the time, they're like, okay, I'll lawyer up. I'm going to be okay. They don't have shit on me. But if they think you're bad guys, that could go sideways. But Tom, without exaggerating, we would be in surveillance on a target for who knows what, and maybe I'm parked at a Home Depot, right? Because the target's across the street, and somebody else has the eyeball. And in the parking lot, I'm seeing shit go down. A random, that's how crazy it was, where it's like, holy shit, I got 2 cars pulling up here and the trunks are opening and they're coming, walking outside. I mean, you can go park somewhere and to sit there for a while and you're going to see some shit that looks highly suspicious. It was crazy. It was a crazy time. A lot of work, and it was fun putting cases together and going up on wires and having multiple wires, and all that was a hoot. And figuring out who's who, all that was a lot of fun. But a lot of it too was stressful as well, if I'm honest, right? That lifestyle of the constant adrenaline, that's not the healthiest either,
Well, it catches up to you. So then after your time in that unit, what was next, George?
Man, so I worked in SIS for a while. I went to internal affairs for a while. I got a call from the chief, which was very weird, because back in that time, you never even really spoke to your lieutenant, right? Sometimes you didn't even know who your major was, right? You wouldn't even recognize him. It was a different time in policing. You didn't raise your sergeant. You raised a senior officer, just a different time. And I got a call to the chief, and I thought, what in the world is this? And they needed somebody with narcotics experience to go to internal affairs. And so I didn't want the job, but I went, and, we put a case together, and then I stayed, and then I enjoyed the job. I always wanted to give the officers the absolute benefit of the doubt, but if we had a bad cop, we had a bad cop. I felt like, you need to protect the integrity of the badge and the brand of the city that you represent. And
nobody hates a bad cop more than a good cop.
Correct. And on top of that, and I felt also like, man, if the cops know, right, that we got our shit together in internal affairs, because honestly, there were times where internal affairs were just like the worst investigators. If we had our shit together, man, I want to help you not get in trouble, be able to retire and collect a pension, right? And if you know that I'm going to hold you accountable, there's a better chance of that happening. Whether you appreciate it or you don't, that made me feel good that we're going to keep cops straight. I like that.
So I think internal affairs for me was always, to Pete's point about no one hates a bad cop more than a bad cop. I have 2 feelings on that, what I want to share with you guys and see what you guys think. One was that they White Sox you. You know what that means, Chief, for us? They White Sox you to death. They investigate you. Someone made an allegation. It was bullshit. They find that you committed some bullshit crime, policy violation or procedural violation, and they hammer you. When the whole idea of you being a drug dealer and a gun runner was completely malicious and it was bullshit, but they still hit you. That was one thing. The second thing I always felt was, like, when we were working and we knew the cop was bad, we always felt like, don't make me the guy who has to dime him out. Do your fucking job and get this guy. Where are you guys? Why are you not finding this guy? And do I really have to, and as Pete knows more than anybody, do I really need to be the whistleblower? Because if I do, I know I'm shit out of luck. and Pete, to this day still has ramifications of this. And so we always felt like they're not doing their job as good as they could be. What do you guys think?
Well, I'll tell you two things I'll say. One is I didn't have issues with internal affairs. We had inspections people who used to come around and mess with us for the White Sox. I once got warned and admonished. I didn't get a rip. I had the heel on my shoe was worn. Literally, I had a black lieutenant. I forgot his name. I think it was Jones. Anthony. He looked like the guy from the Cola Nuts commercial, the 7-Up commercial, the bald guy, Jeffrey Holder. Literally got down on his hands and knees and rolled a pencil. And because it went under my heel was too worn out and I got ripped. Anyway, so that was one. I thought that was asinine. So, yeah, those were the guys who came after you for the White Sox, or you didn't have the right equipment on, or you had the wrong lapel pin or some crap on top of your rack. But look, I actually like the idea of having experienced guys in internal affairs because I'd rather get judged by a guy who's been punched in the face, who's rolled around with a guy to get handcuffed, rather than these other knuckleheads that go in there because that's the only way they're going to get a gold shield. So a guy like George with pages 2's going in there, fucking awesome. Whereas, as you know, Tommy, we had a lot of schmucks in the NYPD. They could not get a detective shield because they hid in the precinct. And then they just said, hey, I want to be a detective. So they'd go to internal affairs and we're judging cops without ever having done the job of being a cop.
100%. And listen, I can tell you, so I worked in internal affairs 3 times. I went there as an investigator in the anti-corruption unit, what we call the proactive unit. I went back as a lieutenant, again, working on the proactive side. So we didn't do general investigations, which would be more like the policy shit. And then the last time I was there as the major in charge of internal affairs. Now, while I was in charge of internal affairs, we did not, if we had a complaint, and during the course of that investigation, it was revealed that, Pete said shit while he arrested a guy, I didn't care about that. Oh, that's a, discourtesy. No. If somebody complained and said, hey, this officer spoke to me in this profane way, and I thought I was unprofessional, and that's the complaint, well, then that's the complaint, right? Okay, no problem. But not with some of the complaints we'd get that were serious, I wouldn't do that. When I was the chief, I didn't allow, with body-worn camera, it's different if it's a misconduct, right? So if somebody makes a complaint and you see some kind of egregious shit or, abusive treatment, misconduct, something that's different. But, my philosophy as chief was the same. Hey, man, if somebody complained about an improper procedure, an abusive treatment, and we look at body worn, and while looking at the body worn, we hear somebody say, what the fuck, or, some guy was chewing gum and he's not supposed to, or he had 1 pen instead of 2, or whatever bullshit. No, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna write that person up for that. That's not the point of it, and it's not the spirit of it. And so we're not gonna do it. And I don't want to give people a reason to think, hey man, anytime that I don't have to turn this shit on, I'm not. Because every time I do, they hit me with some nitpickety bullshit. I didn't want people to feel that way, right? I wanted people to feel like I have to turn this camera on. I want the camera to protect me, not it be a vehicle to screw me over every time they want to.
Yeah. No, that's so good. And that's exactly what, and I want to pull up this, this comment. So Chief, just so for perspective, Ron Layson is saying, I felt Resnick, which is Chief Resnick, who retired because he got aged out, but then they brought him back as a civilian to run internal affairs. Everyone hated him. Well, I shouldn't say everyone. A lot of people hated him. A lot of people thought he was difficult. I actually felt he was asking hard questions. That's all he was. And all right, so he was nitpicking here and there and that stuff. But I worked for him for 2 years in cold case, and I thought I managed up really well by including him because he was a stellar investigator, that I just explained what we were doing in front of him questioning what we were doing. And anyway, it's really good for me to hear that Resnick becomes chief of IAB, and he pushed IAB away from White Sox, and he agrees with Pete that inspections, which is the lower version of internal affairs in the NYPD, they were the pain in the ass. So go.
Yeah, and I think that's the way it should be, right? I think that you should have a unit where, hey, I understand that this is the kind of case that I'm going to investigate. The officers know, hey, that this is this person's job. But if you work in internal affairs, man, and especially if you're working serious cases, man, I don't even want to, I don't want to minimize it either, right? But I don't want to spend a lot of time. It's not the Kennedy assassination. We're not going to go fucking knock on 15 doors to see if someone saw whether the officer was wearing the wrong, belt or whatever, right? If there's a violation of policy and the sergeant can address it, wonderful. Because ultimately, I think that's where the responsibility lies, right? The responsibility should lie with the sergeant of that unit. He should be telling his guys, hey, man, this is what I expect from you. I don't want you to, people to be watching us because you're a fuck up. Get your shit together, right? So we can go out and do a good job. And let's make the residents, let's make the city, let's make our agency proud. That kind of stuff to me should fall on the sergeant. That officer is not, on his game. That supervisor should be, I think, held a little bit more responsible for, hey, you're with this person every day, right? Make sure that they got their shit together.
It's called actual leadership. Imagine that. It's not everywhere, George. So good on you for instituting it. Oh,
hey, Pete, I'm gonna punt to you for the comment on the screen.
Our my former colleague and the SAC who I worked for when I first got to Miami, Carlos Canino, who I know you know.
Yes.
Chief Colina is one of the legendary Miami PD chiefs, a cop's cop. And Carlos was also back in the day an agent down in South Florida, back when shit was off the hook. So yeah, he know. But I agree with Carlos.
That's high praise for quite the professional there. I'm flattered.
So, Chief, I will say that one of the proudest moments for Pete and I in episode 14 tonight is that the feedback has come from the likes of Carlos Canino and others that the first 13 guests have all been true cops, have done the job. They're not some person on the sideline who observed something and then is telling the story. I think we're leading into this tonight as well. The feedback I got all week that you were coming on was demonstrable and really exciting. And I think that's the only way Pete and I would do it. So again, I'm going to extend my grace and thanks to you for coming on and spending the time. We're at about 200 viewers live right now. We'll probably get around anywhere from 800 to 1,000. We're shooting for every episode. We're looking for hit that 1,000 mark. We really need to get it out there. So if you could, share with your South Florida folks, because they need to hear their story. So, and because I think the country needs to hear how dedicated and how committed cops were. They love the community. You said it before, a small amount of people commit a large amount of crime. Anyone who's paying attention knows that. Mm-hmm. I will say that in the 79th precinct, there were some cops that thought every single person in that community was horrible. And it used to really piss me off. And they made a shirt that said 7-9 precinct, whatever. And then on the back, they wrote, "We hate you too."
Wow.
And the precinct commander went bonkers.
Yeah.
Went bonkers.
Tommy, your mic.
Oh, Tommy, we lost you.
You hit your mic, Tommy.
Tommy, your mic.
I tapped it.
Yeah. You're good.
Yeah.
The precinct commander went bonkers and said, "If you ever wear that shirt in this precinct again, I will suspend you immediately." Well, I don't know if he could have did that, but and I have felt the same. Like, we had 65,000 residents in a 1.4 square mile area. Small amount of terrorists, urban terrorists, committed a majority of the crime. So, again, same thing. I'm going to bring up one more picture in your early days, and we're going to start advancing to your elevation and rank and how those things all played out. What's this picture, Chief?
So that's when we first went up to special investigations, and that was a simple kilo reverse that we did. That was a partner of mine at the time. And man, we had so many people that would call right? We had all these different informants, and it was just so much work that we could barely manage it, just with the amount of people saying, hey, what would I get paid if I blah, 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 right? They were always handing somebody up. Some of it was nuts, right? Like we had this couple that, were setting up heroin deals out of their own home. They wanted us to go and take over the house and arrest some of the people. And we're the ones explaining to them, hey, man, I appreciate that you want to cooperate with the police, but you understand this is dangerous, right? And this is your home, right? You're going to invite people to your house to, and tell them that you're selling heroin so we can arrest them. And I don't know that this is the best way to go about this, but it was just so crazy. And listen, the word was out in the street that depending on what you were able to deliver, you were going to get paid as an informant, right? So, heroin was a big deal. If you had heroin and guns together, that was a big deal. And if you were an informant and you had information on that, we were going to pay you. And so we had a lot of people calling. That was like just some afternoon. We had we thought it was a potential sheriff's deputy from a county on the west side of Florida. When we started communicating with them over the phone, we did some research and we saw that they worked for the sheriff's office, but what they actually were a process server. So they worked for the sheriff's office, but they weren't a deputy. They were a process server. So that was an interesting case. But yeah, that was a kilo reverse there when I first went up to SIS.
Wow, nice. Good pinch.
All right, so let's start talking about some of the ranks. So, like, what I know you walked through internal affairs at a couple of ranks, but like, what was your favorite rank? And then walk us through the escalation towards chief. And I got a great picture, especially for the NYPD guys, with you getting promoted. I'm going to say assistant chief, but the NYPDs are going to appreciate it. But NYPD guys will appreciate it. But like, walk us through. Now you're started ascending through the agency.
So I was a cop for about 13 years before I became a sergeant. I was a cop for quite some time, worked a lot of different jobs. And what happened there was kind of similar to me becoming a police officer. I'd come home and complain to my wife about how incompetent a lot of these sergeants were that I worked for. It sounds terrible. I hope they're not listening. But there was a lot of sergeants that were bad, and just they were not good supervisors. They weren't good team leaders. And I bitch about it all the time. And she was like, well, if you think you're so smart, then why don't you become a sergeant? And I was like, well, I will. Right. So I take the exam. I do really well. And I get promoted to sergeant. And, in terms of the ranks, I think that was probably my favorite, was being a sergeant, because, man, you really got to know the people you worked with. You got to help them in a pretty significant way if you wanted to. You got to impact their lives in a really significant way if you wanted to. And so that position for me was the best one. And I liked to be able to, help them when they needed help, pick them up when they needed to get picked up, give them work hard to try to get them time off, send them to schools, advocate for them. Because I felt like a lot of times, sergeants didn't do that because maybe they didn't want to fight with the other people, right? The lieutenants and on up,
Yeah. So I have a comment on that. Pete, you want to weigh in on that? But I have a comment on that.
Well, look, I think as a sergeant, or I wasn't a sergeant, but I was a group supervisor, and this first line supervisors, you're the closest to where the rubber meets the road, where you're still kind of doing the work. I mean, by the time I was a SAC, I may as well have worked at a bank. I was signing budget forms, and stuff like that. But no, I agree. That's probably as close as you can get to why you came on the job while being in leadership. The higher you ascend in the ranks, the further you get away from why you actually came on the job, I think. And I loved all the positions I had. But yeah, there's something that I was very fond of being a first line supervisor, leading the crew, going out there and doing the work.
Keeping them safe, keeping them straight, all of it,
Yeah. So that's really an interesting perspective, because I always felt when I got promoted to sergeant, I had about 7 years on a job, which I felt was, I came on the job at 20 and was on the street at 21. I became a sergeant at 27. I still think both of those are way too early, but that's another story. That's what it was. That's what the situation presented. So I took advantage of it. However, I did look at it like, as becoming a sergeant was like, I have to look out for the agency, but I also need to take care of the troops. And then Jerry Kane, who's a retired NYPD sergeant, he said, Tommy, and we talked about this and he never put it into perspective. You were 50% union delegate, 50% supervisor. Like, your union delegate, like, you got to take care of them, protect them. Don't let them hurt themselves. Mm-hmm. But if they do hurt themselves and you couldn't prevent it, then you got to be the sergeant, and you soften that blow as much as you can, but it is what it is. And they did what they did. So it's great to hear you say that, Chief, the way you felt and took that. And with 13 years is probably a really good space and time, with enough experience and the things that you went through to really think that. So how long before you made lieutenant?
Man, so this is where, I'll call it luck, but this is an example, Tommy, of how your life can really, you got to be at the right place at the right time. The stars need to align, and then you also need to work really hard, right? All of that has to happen. So when I take that sergeant's exam, I come out number 3 on the list. I think 338 people or something are on the list. I'm number 3. The first batch of promotions was only 5 of us, right? The very first group promoted off that list was 5 of us. That was in May. You have to be a sergeant for at least 2 years before you're eligible to take the lieutenant's exam. The only 5 people off my list that were eligible to take the lieutenant's exam were us top 5. Other sergeants could too, but from my list, only us 5. Man, I take the lieutenant's exam, even though I had no seniority, and I thought I'm not going to do well because you get points for seniority. I get on the lieutenant's list. I eventually get promoted. The union had to sue the city 7-10 years later because they did not give another lieutenant's exam. So you had all these vacancies that were open. It's expensive, and it's a process, and the city didn't do it. The union had to sue. In other words, if I'm not number 3 on that list, there wasn't another lieutenant's exam for me to take for a decade. I sincerely doubt. Wow. I sincerely doubt that I would have even taken it. I would have thought, hey, man, I got 20, plus years. I'm not going to be a rookie going back to midnights as a lieutenant. I doubt it. I would have finished my career as a sergeant. Nothing wrong with that, obviously. But my point is that just because of the way things broke, I was able to get promoted to lieutenant. I was a lieutenant for a couple of years. I got promoted to commander. I got to work in an area that was an affluent area here in Coconut Grove. I was the commander. Everybody told me, oh, man, they screwed you. Those people are super entitled. They're unrealistic. Man, I loved it. It was a really nice area of the city. I was there all the time. I'd go on the weekend to the restaurants with my wife. They all got to know me. I got to know them. That was the only time that I got promoted that was a little bit of bittersweet, because they treated me so well there that when I got called that they were promoting me to major, I thought, shit, but I like it here. And the job they were giving me was kind of a mess, but I was a commander for only a year and they promoted me to major. There was that's when I graduated from the police academy.
What picture is this, Chief?
That's me and my mom and my stepdad, and that's police graduation day.
Is it really? Because I thought it might have been the early. I know it took 13 years, but is that shield? Is it the lighting gold?
It's the lighting. Yeah, that's a silver badge.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, man, you aged well for 13 years, but
yeah,
I thought no. And I didn't see Sergeant Stripes, and I don't know how they do it. So
Yeah. No, that was graduating the academy.
Well, that's a great picture, and that's one I'm sure you cherish. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where were your major, George?
Man, so we fell under a consent decree. We had all these controversial shootings. We had a section called the Tactical Operations Section. All the high liability units fell under that section. That was a chief at the time wanted to bring all these units into one section. From K9 to crime suppression to what they call problem solving teams, PSTs, SWAT, all these high liability teams were there, and there was a series of controversial shootings, and the DOJ was coming down on us, and honestly, it was a little bit out of control. So they promote me to major, and that's where they send me. They're like, "Hey, you're going to go take this over and fix it because it's a hot mess." And so I appreciated the assignment. And the trust, right, that the chief had in me to put me there. But right away, I start feuding with an assistant chief that we had. I don't know if he felt threatened. He was my chief, right? He was the chief of field operations. But man, he was constantly, we were doing great. And it didn't matter what I would say. He always felt like I was challenging him or trying to show him up somehow. And that was never the way that I did business. But I don't think he liked that the chief promoted me and stuck me there. I don't think that he liked that the chief, was constantly praising the work. I don't think he liked that. And man, we kind of went at it a few times, and then he called me to his office to, complain about something. I don't remember what it was. Even though we were doing really well. And I remember I walk in, I sit down, and he tells me, I don't like this and I don't like that, blah, blah, blah. And I told him, Chief, man, I'm sorry about that. Because, I like to say that I've never had a supervisor that was displeased with my work product. I've always taken pride in saying that. And I can't say that now because obviously you're displeased. And I'm sorry about that, but I got to tell you, you have to be like the worst boss I've ever had in my life.
I love it.
So he gets up, he walks over to his door, he opens his door. I get up, I walk out, I took the hint, right? In police work, we call that a clue, right? So I caught up, I walked out, I went to the car, I called my wife. Okay, this time for sure. Now I've already had a few of these in my career where I call my wife and said, okay, this time for real. I really just up. I've had a few of those. I had a few. I'm going to tell you one more in a minute, but I call her and say, hey, this is what happened. But I had to tell him that he's fucking terrible, right? He's like the worst supervisor that I've ever had. And, I think 2 days went by, and then he called me and I was transferred to a different section. I was there for about a month. I went up to New York for a few days to spend some time up in the city. And I got transferred again to a different section. So he was really messing with me. What's fascinating is that during this time, I think he starts to appreciate the directness, right? Because he'd tell me shit and I give it right back, right? But it was always good work that was happening. Right. And I think he felt like shit, I don't like this guy in one sense, but if I have something that needs to get done, I can count on him. Right. So he started to like me. But that was, I thought I'm done. He's going to call the chief and say, hey, I got to whack this guy. When I was the commander, another similar incident, when I was promoted to commander, that I go to this Coconut Grove, there was a commissioner who was very powerful. He was involved politically with a bunch of people. I get an email that all these people got a ticket on this street in Coconut Grove, fancy neighborhood, and they're all pissed off. I get this email that there's a meeting at City Hall with, hey, that's right, Chief Big Guy. The comment there, that was what they call him. I get a call, I get an email. You have a meeting today at City Hall with the commissioner, the city manager, somebody from the mayor's office, and the residents of Del Prado Boulevard. And I was like, what the fuck is this? So I go to the major. I'm a rookie staff, command staff officer. I was like, hey, I got this email. What does this mean? What am I supposed to do? And oh, wow, I guess go to the meeting. All right. So I show up there. This commissioner says, hey, Commander, I have all these people here. There's a you can't turn between 4 and 6 on their street, which is really for the people who cut through. And one of your officers wrote all these people that live on that block, and they wrote them tickets. And that's ridiculous. That's not, why that sign is there. We've never had a problem. Now we have a problem. And I can't help but notice it since you became the commander. And I didn't know how to handle that. It was kind of a shock. And the residents are sitting there at this conference table. And so I told them, Commissioner, first of all, let me assure the residents that there was no targeted operation, right, to go after the folks that live on Del Prado Boulevard or wherever it was. There's a sign there. You can't turn, right? The law applies to everyone. Now, admittedly, I would not write that ticket. Clearly, the spirit of that is, the people cutting through. I can ask my officers to use their best judgment, and I will. But I can't tell you that won't happen again, because what if it's a county officer, a highway patrolman that also has jurisdiction, right? If it says you can't turn, you can't turn. And so I apologize to you guys. I recommend that you take it to court. Now, what I'm really uncomfortable about is that we're sitting here and your officer discussing this as someone who just came from internal affairs. This to me smacks of impropriety. And the manager, the city manager stands up. Whoa, that's not what this is. Calm down. I was like, I'm calm. I'm just saying I don't like that. I feel like I'm being pressured, right? The officer didn't do anything wrong. Again, I wouldn't have written that ticket, but that's what the sign says. For all I know, somebody complained, and that's why he went there, and he wrote the tickets. You don't like it, take the shit to court. But why am I being called in here to sit with a commissioner? Why? I don't understand. Yeah. Same thing. I went to the car, honey. This lasted like 2 weeks. This gig as a commander. But you know what? Same thing, Tommy, happened with that commissioner. He called me and he goes, hey, this is on my way home. Hey, Commander, we sure did bloody our noses in there. And I told him, Commissioner, that wasn't my intention, but you caught me off guard. I understand these are your constituents. If you would have told me ahead of time, hey, I'm going to call you in, this is what we're going to do, I would have handled it differently. But I felt like you pushed me into a corner, and my instinct was to throw a punch, and what can I tell you? Yeah. Believe it or not, that guy was my biggest advocate the entire time I was at the police department.
You know why? Because he recognized leadership. Look, leadership is communication. You know this, George. And that means up and down. And that means uncomfortable conversations sometimes, up and down. And look, I've had my share of people who wanted to be surrounded by yes men. I had a guy in headquarters, and Carlos is listening, he'll know who I'm talking about, who he wanted a specific guy to go in there. He was a guy he was a bit of a bully, but he would never do things himself. He delegated his bully tasks. And I pushed back each and every time. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And look, in the end, I persevered, but it was uncomfortable. But other people respected the fact that I would push up and push down. And I would always be respectful in both directions. So kudos to you for having those conversations, George. It takes balls, but that's what makes a good leader, is having the balls to have the conversations.
Yeah, and listen, and I was lucky, like I said, because he could have handled it differently, right? He called me and said, we bloodied our noses, and he accepted my explanation, which was the truth. If he would have been a different kind of person, it could have cost me severely, right? Yeah. So, I'm happy that it worked out the way it did, but I recognize it could have gone sideways, but it's just the way that I reacted. The same thing with Chief Big Guy. I don't know how hard he worked to get me whacked. Maybe he worked hard, maybe he didn't. Maybe it wasn't the best thing to tell him you're the worst boss I've ever had. Maybe I could have handled that a little bit differently. But honestly, by that point, I was like up to here. I was like, I don't give a shit. Take your oak leaves, shove them up your ass. I don't care, So I kind of already went in a little cranked.
Yeah. So we got some promotions. Let's look at some photos. So I'm assuming this is the same day, right? So we had two photos.
Actually, yes. Yeah, that was me getting promoted to lieutenant. That's Chief John Timoney.
Yes.
And
Frank Fernandez.
And that's Frank Fernandez next to him, Deputy Frank Fernandez. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's not only good for you, congratulations on promotion to lieutenant, but for all the NYPD listeners today, and we have over 200. Well, I don't know if they're all NYPD, but wherever they're from, the NYPD guys, if anyone ever worked for John Timoney and know that he went down to Miami, he was the chief, Philadelphia, and then he passed away. Rest in peace, sir. Did you work directly for him? Did you interact with John Timoney? Because on our job, guy kind of walks on water.
Man, so he did not get off on a good foot.
I bet.
Yeah, in Miami, because he'd walk into the elevator, wouldn't say hello or good morning or anything. He really wouldn't engage you. I didn't have that reaction. I didn't experience that. I don't know why, but he took a liking to me, and he actually had me take care of a couple of different assignments. Right? Hey, I want Jorge Colina to handle this, where it was like a special request. And I was really fond of him. He gave me a lot of really good advice. When I got promoted to sergeant, he called me up to the office and told me, hey, you understand what your job is now, right? Your job is to take care of those cops. They're your responsibility. I hope you understand that this isn't just about a raise and you get a gold shield. I hope you understand that this is now watching over those cops. You're responsible for them. You understand that? And I was like, fuck, I hadn't even thought about it that way. No, officer, actually, I thought this is a raise. It's pensionable. And I get a full badge, which, I'm excited about. It was a little bit of a reality, smack in the face, which I was super grateful for. But I had a really good relationship with John Timoney. And again, I have no idea why, but he was fond of me. And because he was, he helped me quite a bit, gave me a lot of advice, but he was rough with, let me really quick. I'm sorry. I got to tell you, John Timoney, why I respected him. So during FTAA, right, if you guys remember, that was the free trade agreement of the Americas. They had one in Seattle, Mexico City, Paris, and everywhere these people went, it was fucking chaos. They destroyed all kinds of shit. John Timoney's the chief. First of all, he's sending cops to all these places to kind of, get intel. He's spending money to make sure that we're prepared. He got agencies, right, and gave them parts of the city of Miami. So like Hialeah, which is a neighboring city, you guys are going to be responsible for Bayside. You're going to have cops in Bayside. You guys this, you guys that. We had our shit together. He went to the vault and broke out the old wooden batons. He reissued those. But anyway, I'm working and I'm plainclothes, and I have an eyeball on this group of black bloc agitators. I'm watching them walk. They go into this empty field. They start getting bricks and shit that they had pre-staged there, and they're putting it into their bags so they can go and do whatever the hell they were going to do. So I started advising on the radio, hey, I have an eyeball. This is what they're doing, blah, 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 yada. And from the corner of my eye, I see cops on bikes. And I say, hey, Miami, I have some officers here. And I kind of go like this, and they come over. And while I have an eye on the bad guys, I'm telling the guy on the bike, hey, I need you to go over there, take those guys down. You see what they're doing, blah, 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 yada, yada. And I hear this voice say, okay. And it sounds like the chief. I look, and it's John Timoney. And he's on the bike with these other cops. And he rides off, and they go take these guys down. It was hysterical. I need you to go do this. And his response was, okay. Whoop. Off he went with the rest of the cops to take these people down. He was a trip and a half.
It's funny. Us cops that worked in the Bronx knew Timothy from something else. First off, he was a great boss. He was a cop's cop. He worked his way up the ranks. He could be rough, but he used to cash his check at a pub right around the corner from the 50th precinct called Pauline's. They used to cash our checks there, and very often,
I know Pauline's right on the corner.
Yes, and sometimes he would spend a substantial amount of that check that night. But he loved cops. He was rough. He was old school Irishman, but he was a cop's cop. But yeah.
Come on,
Tommy, you're the new generation. You know, he's old.
Well,
school.
now that we're going to get into it, hold on a second. Sleepy Joe, $10. Good show, gentlemen. Here's for a Cuban sandwich and espresso. Chief, we didn't establish. You came from Jersey and then you went to South Florida. Are you Cuban?
Yeah, parents are Cuban.
But they don't drink
there you go.
They drink cafecito.
Thank you.
By the way, helped me put on about 25 pounds in the 4 years I was assigned to Miami because it was full of sugar. They serve it like a thimble. It's like crack. I used to have one in the morning and then one for the drive home. They would bring you, hey boss, have a cafecito. It's addictive. It's magical though. It's great stuff, but it is full of sugar.
It is full of sugar, and it is like crack. And the mistake they make here is, if you got good people, when there's shit going on, you know, they bring you coffee. They probably should be bringing you herbal tea or something to kind of keep you cool, but they're doing the opposite. You're bringing you shots of this shit. Now you're really wired, you know?
Hey, real quick, Georgia Van Houten, just a Long Island girl who has great respect for the profession. I love hearing cop stories. Appreciate your insight tonight. Thank you for the service. Georgia, thanks for tuning in tonight. Appreciate that. I love the live chat. We're not as engaged. I think the people just like to listen because these are good stories. Not a lot of controversy. We're just telling good stories. But I love the interaction with the chat. So thanks everybody for chiming in, sharing what you're drinking, what's going on, your comments, your feelings about what's happening. It's really great. So thanks for that. So
it was like Carlos witnessed that arrest, by the way, George.
Who did?
Carlos Canino. We apparently witnessed that arrest when Timothy led the bike.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it.
I was there on the ground, an ID team, Miami. What is FTAA? Chief Timothy led that arrest. What's that?
That was that free trade agreement of the Americas that was so controversial that people lost their minds over that shit.
Yeah. So all right. So you're starting to ascend into the higher ranks, Chief. What does that feel like for you?
I was a major for quite some time. I was a major for that tactical operations, the Central District, the South District. Then I go back to internal affairs. We have a couple different chiefs. Then Rudy Yanis becomes the chief, and I work for him for a little bit, and then he promotes me to assistant chief. You know, what's interesting about Chief Yanis, so Tommy, Chief Yanis, he was a major with us. A new chief comes in and demotes him back to his civil service rank of lieutenant.
Wow.
I am a commander, and then I'm a major. When I'm the major there of that tactical operations, I call Rudy Yanis. Hey, man, why don't you come work for me here as a lieutenant? Oh, I don't want to do that. You know, he was, disgruntled, right? Angry. He felt like I didn't do anything wrong. Why did I get demoted? Which was true. You hadn't done anything wrong. I tell him, Rudy, you have a lot of experience, man. Your temperament is like a cool, calm approach to things. It's really what we need right now. You have a certain sense of maturity that the troops will benefit from. And man, you're stuck on midnights. Come work for me. You'll have the weekends off. I'll take care of you. He turned me down like 3 or 4 times. Never came. Hey man, I appreciate it, but no thanks. Anyway, this chief is fired. A new chief comes in, promotes Rudy back to major. Really short time later, assistant chief. And then he becomes the chief of police. Well, man, if I would have been an asshole to him, right? So now I have rank and he's been demoted, right? And by the way, all these people that were demoted, they were almost like persona non grata, right? So all the new staff members felt like, well, I can't be friendly with them because if the chief sees this, maybe, I'm stained by them, if you know what I mean. Well, I didn't feel that way. I thought, hey, if you're my friend, you're my friend. If I like you, I like you. And if I don't, I don't. Man, again, kind of lucky because, Rudy remembered that. He remembered, hey, I was a lieutenant and you were willing to go fight to bring me to your unit. And he did not forget that. So, when there was an opportunity to make me assistant chief, he made me assistant chief. I was the assistant chief in patrol, field operations, and then investigations. And then I got to be the assistant chief in administration. So I got to be an assistant chief over every division, which I was very fortunate to be able to get that experience until I eventually became the chief of police.
Okay. So when was this picture?
I think that's when I was promoted to lieutenant. That's my
wife. Lieutenant, like you gave me all the early photos. You didn't give me any of the later photos.
Yeah, I think that's lieutenant. I'm not sure. There's actually more gray there. That could have been major, before they put the oak leaves on.
Scale it by the amount of gray in your hair.
That's what I'm doing. Yeah, and that has more gray.
I would kill to have gray hair.
Yeah, Pete uses it by how much hair he actually had. Look at you. You look great with a full head of hair.
Thank you. Yeah, that's probably major. Yeah.
Well, it's a wonderful picture. It's great. Thanks for sharing that one.
Absolutely.
But so assistant chief, and just real quick, so Ron Layson, who runs with Rob Lukash, the executive perspective on the same channel, got up, jump off. He's going to go and excuse me, but he'll catch on the replay another great guest on the tavern, professionals from across the country, which is, just so you know, Chief, that's where me and Pete come in with this channel. Is we have a national reach, which is exciting for us to have traveled. I think I speak for Pete when I say we're both blessed, having gone all across the country and met so many great cops from so many different agencies and telling their stories, memorializing their careers. And that's what we're trying to do here today. So whether we get 1,000 guests or 10,000 or 100,000, someone needs to hear the stories of really true, committed professionals in law enforcement. Sheepdogs, my favorite people. So thanks again. Thanks, Ron, for that comment. But we still got a lot to talk about. Yeah. So what's up, Pete? What's next?
No, I'm just, I was there for your speech when you first took over the department. And as you know, it made an impact because I didn't really work with you very long. But I reached back when I had some opportunities where I needed some help with some consultancy when they were going to take away our tobacco products, for example. But I mean, when you actually did run I know you got to work with like Ari Shapiro, some of my successors down there.
Yes.
But I mean, running the Miami Police Department, I know you talked about instituting some change, bringing technology up to date. How was that, like taking the department in a new direction? I know that's challenging for anybody, but you had a great message. But how was it executing that message?
And it was exciting to have the opportunity, right? It was definitely a tough gig. You never quite anticipate what that job is going to be. You have a good idea as you're working your way up of what the next job is, but as the chief, man, now you really are trying to balance, rank and file, union, politicians, HOA presidents, activists, the community, the merchants, right? I mean, it's a lot of different shit all the time. And it was certainly challenging. I was up for it and I appreciate it. And I love to try to problem solve. It's one of the things that, probably, Tommy, you as an investigator, and Pete, the different jobs that you had, that's kind of like the fun part, is trying to figure out the puzzle, right? And it was the same thing there. Hey, how do I navigate this? I started keeping a little booklet of shit that I wanted to do. As I was working my way up, I thought, man, if I ever become the chief, and I started writing shit down. I thought, oh man, this is a good idea. I'm going to write this down. Or I'm in a meeting, a staff meeting, chief says something that goes over like a fart in church. Okay, don't ever say that. That's not good. So when I become the chief, I have that book, and I got to go back and look at things, right, that I wrote down. Some of it sounded completely ridiculous, right? Because, at the time it sounded good. Now it's ridiculous. But some of it was good. And the main thing that it did was it reminded me, all those years coming up, I would always say, what are they thinking? Why would they do this? What kind of bullshit is that they did here? Why they? And then, I'm there and I'm like, shit, now I'm they, right? I'm they now, right? So let me try to keep that in mind. One of the things that I thought was helpful was I would do video messages, right? So instead of sending an email to the troops, right, or we call it an MPD mailer, right, where everybody gets an email that says, hey, this is a new policy, or this is what we're doing, or we're mobilizing, or whatever the case is. I thought, man, in an email, you can't pick up tone. You can't pick up a facial expression. Sometimes the context, right? You're reading it one way, they mean it a different way. So I thought, I don't want that to happen. So I would have PIO come up. They would videotape me saying, hey, listen, we're gonna try this policy. This is what it's gonna be. This is the reason why I think this may be a good idea. I'm not married to anything here. Let's give it a shot. Let's see how it goes. Send the video out. During the protest, hey, listen, people are going to be really pissed off. Don't take it personal. They're not pissed at you, right? None of this shit happened here in Miami. But if something happens, I want you to, be at your best behavior, be an example. Let's show the rest of the country. Let's be absolute professionals. Please don't take any of this personal. But some people may be pissed off and they see a uniform and they may react, right? Be mindful of that. Do your job, send the video. So I found, by the way, I would do it to the community too, right? There was someone that made some bullshit complaint. There was a story in the media. Man, I did a video and addressed it. Many of you saw the story. This is what actually happened. Here's a little bit of body-worn camera from that. They're completely misrepresenting it. I find it irresponsible because it's going to stir, more potential conflict. And I felt like those videos were really effective, right? With COVID, for example, hey, listen, we're trying to do the best. We don't know what's going on here. We don't know what's going to happen. This is how we're going to start doing shit from now on. Simple things like, hey, if a lot of people lost their jobs, if you can give somebody a warning and not cite them, I would appreciate it, right? Because they may be the only breadwinner at home. So if you can just warn and dismiss them, please do that. Be mindful. If you're going to go out to eat, maybe tip a little bit better. Again, a lot of people have lost their jobs. So please be mindful of that. Man, I felt like those messages, I don't know if it would have been the same, right? Writing an email and sending that out. I just don't. So I like that part of the job, communicating with the masses that way. The technology was really important. As you know, Pete, I insisted on a NIBIN machine. We got our own NIBIN. We started processing our own shit. We did a real-time crime center, gun crime intelligence center. We put a lot of bad guys away. We did a lot of good work. The cops did a tremendous amount of work. I was super grateful. I appreciate the time that I was there, and I appreciated the time that I was the chief. But Tommy and Pete, if I'm honest, 12 seconds, of me driving through the rear gate for the last time was such a weight off my shoulders, man. If I'm honest with you guys,
because you cared about the job. It's a heavy lift, when you're doing that kind of leadership and you're giving your heart and soul into it. It takes a toll on you. So when you finally do get it, you go, that heavy is the head that wears the crown. Yeah,
Where's the head? Where's the crown? So Ron Layson, thanks for that. But I want to get back to NIBIN. So since you mentioned it, 14 episodes, finally someone starts talking about tech and connecting cases. First one, not that anyone shouldn't have. They could have if they wanted to. They chose not to. But where was NIBIN when you started as the chief or maybe as an assistant chief? And then what did you do to bring that? Because I am a ballistic, being a former cold case and detective commander, I am all about connecting ballistic evidence, fingerprints, DNA, all of the technical technology and all of the forensics and the biometrics like that, I really love it. I could do a whole episode on that, but we'd probably have 3 viewers. But where were you at with that, Chief? What happened while you were there?
So I was an assistant chief at the time, and the other people in the chief's meeting did not want to try to procure a NIBIN machine. They thought it's not our responsibility. It's going to create more work for us. You know, the county has a lab. We always have ATF we can turn to. And that was not acceptable to me, right? I give my opinion, but I was kind of overruled. When I became the chief, it was critical for me because we have ShotSpotter in Miami, right? So most of the people, the ones who don't know, basically, you know, they're acoustic sensors. Somebody fires a weapon and you get dispatched immediately, right? So, you know, you don't have to call the police. You know, you're alerted and you go out. Well, shit, if we're going out to these calls and sometimes there's nothing there, but there's casings, you know, you don't know when that's going to have value. Mm-hmm. You don't know when you're going to be able to tie that to some, just because there was no one there, no one was hit. And if they were hit, maybe they ran off. That doesn't mean that from that casing, you're not going to be able to tie that to a different crime where there is video, right? Or where there are witnesses. These things are all interconnected, and sooner or later they come together. And if you're not picking up those breadcrumbs, you're dropping the ball, man. You're you know, they're giving you evidence and you're not receiving it. So for me, the NIBIN was, I got to get those casings. I got to process every casing. I need to be able to do this quickly. I don't want to rely on the county. If it wasn't a murder, you're looking at 10 months before you got a report back.
At least.
Yeah, so you're talking about comprehensive collection. Like, how close is any agency in this country from really having comprehensive collection?
There's some, but tell me, when I first got to Florida, because that was a big thing for ATF was NIBIN, Miami-Dade County's lab, which is a great lab, and they were covering a lot of police departments. I mean, I don't think people realize how many police departments are in South Florida. Their turnaround time was roughly 18 months.
Right.
So, I mean, 18 months into an investigation, when you get that lead back, it's worthless to you. So, yeah, some police departments didn't want NIBIN machines. Some did. I know North Miami, where the stadium is, they wanted a machine. I know correct. Miami Gardens, correct. Thank you, George. I know you eventually got a machine, but I mean, just to show you how broken it is, because of some politics down there too. There was a period where Key West Police Department took their spent shells up to Hillsborough County for entry into their machine because they didn't see eye to eye with the Miami-Dade lab. So think about how bad the acquisition time is there. So yeah, George, thanks. That's why I was so happy when George was talking about it at his inception when he got sworn in, was he was bringing the Miami Police Department into this century when it came to ballistics technology, which was our bread and butter and what we really cared about, and other things as well. So, and that's why he made such an impact on me on that first meeting, frankly.
Man, it was big, right? Getting the NIBIN, and then, you know, we had ATF embedded with us. You know, it was like they worked there. There was a lot of people that thought the ATF agents were City of Miami cops, right? They thought they worked in SIS or whatever because they were always there. And it was a huge help. And by the way, all I had to do was ask. I asked the U.S. Attorney for help. I got help. I asked ATF for help. I got help. I asked Secret Service for help. Everybody said yes.
Brian Swain, gentlemen.
Oh, tremendous guy. The other thing that was big was facial recognition technology, right? So very controversial in most of the country. Man, I met with the ACLU. I met with all our activists. I had 3 town hall meetings. You name it, I did it. The ACLU, the president there from South Florida, told me in the meeting, I would never admit this publicly, but what you have done here, the policy you've put together, which was, you know, the people in CID are the ones that wrote this policy, is, you know, honestly pretty phenomenal. But I explained to them, like I explained to the public, if you're okay seeing a video on television and them saying, if you recognize this person who did this shooting, please call, you know, the tip line. If you're okay with that, why would you not be okay with me asking software that's not going to have any bias,
Yeah.
You recognize this picture, and they're only looking at open source, right? If you posted a picture of yourself on Instagram, and now I can match you from a crime scene, and it's only going to be a lead. We're not going to go make an arrest based on that. It's just a lead. So we wrote the policy that way. Man, it made a huge difference. Huge difference.
Yeah. I have a thing I say all the time is that when technology works, and I don't want to get political, but I'm going to get a little bit political. When technology works and puts bad people in jail, expect the hard left to push back.
Yeah.
Shot spotters thrown out of Chicago, I think, is absurd. For example,
Ridiculous.
If the mayor doesn't like that, people are getting arrested. I told Ralph Clark he should wear that as a badge of honor. It says that his technology works.
I have to take like 2 minutes on this because, Chief, you hit something that I'm very familiar with facial recognition, having working with a company that administered a facial recognition deployment. Then another facial recognition company that exploits open source intelligence. I know them intimately. And the irony is that you said without bias, there is a slight bias in the algorithms that was years ago, but it's not now. It actually worked against people of color. So in the fact that they could not be identified inside of facial recognition because of the complexion and because of the lighting. So the algorithms were less accurate with people of color, not more accurate. Therefore, if properly deployed within an agency, they could not generate the lead that you're talking about. And so more people would get away from being identified of people of color than for it. But nobody wanted to listen to the truth. And I know this intimately. And Roger Rodriguez of the NYPD, Kenny McKeel of the NYPD, they started the facial identification section in Real-Time Crime Center in New York. I've spent years on this, and it is the most crazy position of anti-police, I will say, because it's not privacy, not privacy. It's so convoluted, but it is wild because if you would get less potential candidates in a facial recognition algorithm of people of color than you would of people who were Caucasian. And that is the craziest thing. It's like so opposite of the truth. And so you would have thought they would have liked that, not like that. There is a 5-step process on facial recognition where you go through a peer process. You think you got a lead, you might have a lead. And Chief, you said it perfectly. It's only a lead.
That's
no
it.
more or no less valuable than a 911 call.
That's it. That's it.
We're not gonna take up the show on a text call, but like we're at 8:33, we're an hour and 33 minutes in. Chief, let's wrap up your career. How'd you feel being a chief? How emotional and fortunate do you feel? I know it's tremendous because we've talked through Pete, of course. It's a pretty big deal, and we're honored to have you today. But like heavy, where's the heart? Like Ron Layson said, being the chief of Miami Police Department, it's a big deal. Walk us through that, your feelings, and then we'll talk about some hot topics.
Man, for me, like I said, I was super grateful for the opportunity. I recognize that many people deserve a chance, and many don't get the chance, right? Because you know how that works. There's a lot of people that are qualified for a promotion, but there's only one spot open, and one person's going to be happy, and the rest are going to be disappointed. Yeah. And so I recognize that that I got an opportunity where a lot of people didn't. I didn't want to disappoint people. I can tell you, I worked my ass off. I cared deeply about the officers. I know a lot of times maybe they didn't think that because that's, cops are cops, right? And so the mere fact that you're the chief, you're going to have some cops that are going to,
That's always the case.
Some of the cops, what's funny is some of the cops, when they come in that are newer, I think they think that you came out of the academy and with gray hair and became chief, right? They don't even realize that you had your own police career, right? That you were a street cop, you were a narcotics officer, you were whatever. But I felt self-actualized. I felt like, man, I reached the pinnacle of my profession. That was very fulfilling for me. I had so much support, Tommy, coming up. I had so many people help me. I had people give me opportunities. I made a lot of mistakes, fucked up a lot of times, and I had people, forgive me for it, right? And say, hey, man, you work hard and you're coming from a good place and you got a good heart, and that matters. And it's so great when you have people that recognize that sometimes the outcome isn't what you want, but the only part you control is your effort. All you can do is go out and give 110%. If it doesn't work out, it didn't work out, but you did your part. And I had a lot of people that looked out for me a lot. I had, just like I had bad sergeants, I had some that were tremendous and impacted me significantly. I'll never forget, I was a rookie policeman. I had about a year, maybe a little over a year. It was my daughter's birthday. I wanted to take her to Disney World. I had Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off. I was terrified to ask the sergeant for the day off because that's just the way it was back then. And I see him at the gas pumps. I pick up the courage. I say, hey, Sarge, next Friday is my daughter's birthday. I want to take her, blah, blah, blah. Is that okay? And he tells me, well, George, why don't you take Saturday and Sunday off? Sarge, are you sure that's okay? And he tells me, listen, you work really hard. And you want to know something? When you work really hard, yeah, people are going to cut you some slack. They're going to, give you time off when you ask for it because you do a good job here. Man, I remember that like it was yesterday. Such a simple message, but it came at a point in my career where it was important to hear that. Oh, okay, I see how this works. Man, you hump and, good things happen.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty clear, George, that stuff like that happened because it's clear that you show that sort of empathy back, which is why I think I was so impressed when I met you and why so many people that I know who've worked for you think the world of you as a leader. Obviously you're a humble guy, you paid your dues, and you give a shit, about people, not just the mission, but people, which is not always the case, man. I know it's a delicate balance. But the other thing that I'm intrigued by, you mentioned how relieved you were when you finally left, the department is, now in retirement, you and I are working on some things together, but you're doing a lot of consulting in the law enforcement world. So I have to ask a question because some of the things I do, I just feel like I even though I love to have a very good career, a very long career, it's hard to walk away from that career. So I feel like I have to give something back. And I know you're doing some consulting with police departments, you're consulting with law enforcement, you're doing leadership training. Is that the reason for you too? Is that even though you had a lucrative career and a very rewarding career, that you're trying to pay it back in some way?
Yeah, absolutely. So especially the leadership training, right? I love to go talk about leadership and share stories and why certain things are important, and it really appeals to the service side of my heart. And I have a business partner. He doesn't like me to say this, but Pete, we have people call and say, oh man, we'd love you to come speak, but right now we don't have the budget for it. I mean, don't worry about it. I'll go do it anyway. I'll go do it anyway. I don't care. Pay me what you want. Don't pay me. Makes no difference. Because it appeals to that side of my heart. And if I have an opportunity to help somebody or say something that prompts, a thought in their own head that encourages them or inspires them, or it gets them motivated again, or it reminds them of why they got into law enforcement. Because, it's a tough job. We get cynical and we forget. Right. Why we got in. So to remind them about the good stuff, man, that's fun for me. That was the Coconut Grove bed race that we entered. Those are all cops, and we won, believe it or not. So that's when I was the commander in the Grove. I show up at this meeting with these organizers. They're putting together this Coconut Grove bed race where they want to race these beds on wheels down the street, and you push them. Somebody has to sit in the bed and you push it. And I think they thought that I was showing up there to bust their balls about, you're going to pull a permit and the traffic and, all this other shit. And so I walk in, I'm in the back of the room, I'm listening intently. And they were like, Commander, we're going to set up a meeting when it's appropriate, to make sure all this is done, the right way. What's the concern? And I was like, I don't have a concern. I'm sizing up the competition here. That's what I'm doing. I'm sizing. And they looked at me at first like I was joking. No, I'm putting a team together. We're going to have a race here. We're racing in it. And so I asked the cops. Of course, they were like, hell yeah, I want to race. And, we built a bed and we raced and we ended up winning. It was fun.
Oh, good. All right. So let's see. We're an hour 40 in. So if Chief, your career, you want to wrap up anything, and then we'll roll into some hot topics if you want.
No, man, I'm good. I think we've spoken enough about me.
Oh, no, never enough. It's too short. It's too short of an episode. But so some of the hot topics, right?
Yes, let's do it.
So a couple things happened this past week. Joanne Chesimard. I think every cop in the country knows about this case. We had a previous guest, Tom McHale, who performed on the Joint Terrorist Task Force and the New York Police Department's Major Case Squad. He was a Port Authority police officer. However, he was detached. He worked with Tom Nerney. One of my mentors, Charlie Wells, worked on this case. Pete and I have tons of friends in New Jersey who've worked on the Joanne Chesimard investigation. And so there's a lot of emotion on this week. So what's that emotion down all the way down the bottom of 95, all the way down to the end of I-95? What's that going on?
Man, so it's one of those things that in policing that disturb you. It's the part that we don't like. The latter part of my career, I didn't like when some people would look at me with resentment, right? Just because I'm wearing a uniform. Hey, you don't know anything about me. You don't know what I've sacrificed, but I can see the look in your face that you don't like me just because I wear this uniform. And that was really offensive, right? So I have a hard time understanding why people would idolize a murderer, right? So, she's a cop killer. Plain and simple. That's it. The fact that you're a cop killer is bad enough, right? And whatever the circumstances are, they make no difference to me. You're a cop killer. That's bad enough. But to really compound it times 1,000 is somehow you become like a folk hero to people. And man, I'm sorry. I don't understand that. I don't care what your politics are. And I don't care if someone killed a cop, in this case, New Jersey State Police, and they had the best of intentions, but shit went sideways and they ended up shooting an officer. Listen, shit went sideways and you killed a cop. That's it. It's over. I don't care what your intentions were, what you idolized, what was in your heart. That's it. It's over. Why people would want to name, a branch of their college campus or other artists want to idolize this person. This person was a criminal, a terrorist, did bad shit, wanted to harm people. That's it. That's what this was. That's the part, Tommy, that for me, when I hear stuff like this, like I'm a little resentful that we as a government never figured out a way to have somebody go to Cuba and fucking take care of business and leave a New Jersey State Police patch in this fucking lady's house. That bothers me because I know we can get to people, and I don't know why we allowed her to live over there for all those years comfortably. It's disturbing.
I'm going to defer to you, Pete. Go ahead. Comment. Thanks for that, Chief. I agree. Chief?
Everything that George said, it makes me want to vomit in my mouth that the Chicago Teachers Union released a letter supporting her, or that the Democratic Socialists of America lionized her as if she was some sort of hero. She's a murderer, and she'll be judged at the gates of heaven when she finally gets there, hopefully turned away, and will rot in hell. Yeah. Again, she ran away from justice and hid in Cuba. The hell with her.
So, all right. So let's pay respects to Trooper Werner Forster. Again, so many New Jersey colleagues of ours are really bitter about this. The Joint Terrorist Task Force guys who've worked on this extensively. I have so many friends that have worked on this. And if you ask them, let's get on a podcast and let's do this, they will not talk about, they will not get on this. Tommy McHale, who was on for the 9/11 because he's been involved in so much stuff. He's intimately involved in the Joanne Chesimard, and I think it's Fred Hilton, her husband, her second husband, not her first husband. That's where she got her name. She was born of a different name. I don't even want to give any credibility to that. But honestly, to your point, Chief, I can't believe we, as the United States of America, could not have located and apprehended her, and that the government may or may not have protected her, and maybe we could have not have gotten her. But you know what? I honestly believe, to some extent, that I think we were getting close because there was a big announcement in February and March of this year that we were going after her. And let's not forget, it was Barack Obama in 2013 who put her on the most wanted list. She was never on the most wanted list before that. Barack Obama put her on the most wanted list. She needed to be apprehended and answer for her charges. And if she was innocent, maybe, maybe not. She was convicted. She wanted to appeal, go through the process. That's the way it is. However, that being said, I honestly, with everything that's going on right now, I don't even believe she's dead anymore. I believe they were getting close. And I have no reason to believe this other than my instincts. I believe they were getting close, and they're just saying she's dead. Until I see a body, until I see DNA, I won't believe it. My father told me and quoted Edgar Allan Poe, believe half of what you see, half of what you hear. What is it? No. Half of what you see and nothing of what you hear. Edgar Allan Poe. So if I don't see it, I don't believe it. So if she's deceased, God rest her soul, she deserves. No, Pete, she's a human being. She did a terrible thing, but she deserves to be
down below. Down below, my friend.
No, because the whole Charlie Kirk thing is like, you never want to wish anybody dead. I would have rather her faced her charges, and then whatever happened, happened. And if it was the death penalty, the death penalty. But just because she died because of an illness, if that's the case, like I don't wish that. I wanted her to face justice and see it out. So I might have misspoke. As a Catholic, I don't wish death on anybody, but there are some evil people that I don't like lose sleep over.
Evil exists. Evil exists. Of course it does. But you know what? You know what's interesting too? There's a lot of hungry, crazy Cubans in Cuba. They must have not really advertised that she had $1 million bounty, because I can't believe that some people didn't think, hey man, let's wrap her up and stick her in a boat and take her ass back and collect. I'm not bullshitting. I am surprised. That much money, I'm surprised. She must have been watched over, because I find it hard to believe with how, the horrific conditions in which they live over there, that someone didn't think we need to take her to the States and get paid.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I mean, I can't believe you're right. I don't believe we never got her. But that means there's forces against it.
Yeah. And our next hot topic is?
Oh, what are we doing? So Pete Hegseth, let me pull this up. Where is that? Where is that one? Why is that not working? Oh, here it is. I got the wrong one. So I'm still an amateur at the okay. So Pete Hegseth did a speech today. Did you guys catch it at all?
Yes.
I caught like half of it.
Yes.
Okay. So first impressions while I find the video.
Oh, it's a long video, Tommy.
No, I gotta show.
It is my first impression, and then I will let George take over. Is good for him. You know, I wish that we would get away from promoting people or hiring people for the wrong reasons. Our cops, our soldiers should be the best in the business. You know, and look, whether it's male or female, you know, gay, whether they are black, white, Latino, Martian, I don't give a shit. If they're the best in the business, they should get the job. You know, there's plenty of females that kick the shit out of me, MMA fighters and whatnot. And if I was competing to be a Navy SEAL and they beat me out for a job, they deserve the job. God bless them. I think he said a lot of things that had to be said. You know, I was never a fan of diminishing the uniform. Look, even as a cop, I never, ever, ever went on patrol without my shoes shined, without my tie clip on. You look professional because you're treated as a professional when people see you. I agree with everything he said. I think it's something that should have been said a long time ago, and I'm going to shut up and let George talk from this point forward because I can go on and on about it.
Yeah, I agree with the whole appearance, right? So it was always important for me to look sharp. I thought it helped keep me safe, right? And by the way, we know statistically that that's the truth, that if you look like you got your shit together, you're less likely to be challenged. The one thing that I did not like, and I'll explain, was on the surface, it sounds like it's fine, which was every person, regardless of rank, has to pass a PT test twice a year. And
Right.
as I thought about it, I thought, wait a minute. So if you're like the master strategist, 60-year-old general who's recognized as the person who is the master strategist, this guy's got his shit together, and he can't do 10 push-ups because he's got a previous, injury. I don't want this guy to go. I want him to stay. Right now, I'm not going to give him a Navy SEAL badge or call an Airborne Ranger and all this other shit, because you do need to perform at a certain level, and you want to be in a forward position, infantry and all that. That's different. But I don't want to lose experience. If you're a master strategist, I don't want to lose that person because they can't do pull-ups. And look, just to make a quick sports analogy.
I mean, are the tests weighted, George? Does anybody know? Like, I mean, obviously,
I don't know, and it wasn't clear. And, I just thought, well, shit, wait a minute, man. I would hate to lose. And I'll give the sports analogy real quick. Vince Lombardi, Andy Reid, Don Shula. Okay. I want these guys to coach my team. I don't care what their time is in the 40. You know what I mean? So, okay, you can't run anymore, but I'm not asking you to run. I'm asking you to coach. So if the idea is that you're a 62-year-old general, you've gotten a little long on the tooth and you can't run a mile in fucking 3 minutes or whatever it is, me personally, I don't care. As long as you know what the fuck you're doing and you're going to keep our soldiers safe and you're going to inflict the most amount of casualties you can on the enemy. If that's your skill set, that matters to me. I don't want people to lose their minds over fitness. If you're a frontline soldier, completely different. There, I completely agree. No, man, you're going to be a fighter. You're a fighter. You're a fighter. But what I mean?
Yeah, Pete.
No, it's a valid point. I mean, I think there should be some standard. Like, I'm not like Mark Milley looked like he was wearing a potato sack. I mean, you should, George. Like, I saw you in your uniform, my friend. You look sharp. You always look fit. You look like you let yourself go. I mean, I think there needs to be a balance. But I do agree. I mean, if somebody's brilliant at something, there needs to be some way to keep them around, some exception, perhaps. But yeah.
So I'm just glad that the chief mentioned Vince Lombardi, because he wasn't a Packers. He was Giants before he was Packers. So
right.
And you're a New Jersey guy, so come on, Chief. But listen, let's throw this video up. Let's see how long we can tolerate it. There's some words in here, and then we'll dissect it, and then we'll do a wrap up. What do you guys think? Is that all right?
Yeah. Please take your seats. It's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are. So whether you're an airborne ranger or a chairborne ranger, a brand new private or a 4-star general, you need to meet the height and weight standards and pass your PT test. And that's why today at my direction, the era of unprofessional appearance is over. No more beardos. The era of rampant and ridiculous shaving profiles is done. Simply put, if you do not meet the male level physical standards for combat positions, cannot pass a PT test, or don't want to shave and look professional, it's time for a new position or a new profession. But when it comes to any job that requires physical power to perform in combat, those physical standards must be high and gender neutral. If women can make it, excellent. If not, it is what it is. If that means no women qualify for some combat jobs, so be it. That is not the intent, but it could be the result, so be it. I'm issuing new policies that will overhaul the IG, EO, and MEO processes. I call it the no more walking on eggshells policy. We are liberating commanders and NCOs. We are liberating you. We are overhauling an inspector general process, the IG, that has been weaponized, putting complainers, ideologues, and poor performers in the driver's seat. We're doing the same with the equal opportunity and military equal opportunity policies, the EO and MEO at our department. No more frivolous complaints, no more anonymous complaints, no more repeat complainants, no more smearing reputations, no more endless waiting, no more legal limbo, no more sidetracking careers, no more walking on eggshells. At the War Department, promotions across the Joint Force will be based on one thing: merit. Colorblind, gender neutral, merit-based. The entire promotion process, including evaluations of warfighting capabilities, is being thoroughly re-examined. We've already done a lot in this area, but more changes are coming soon. I have fired a number of senior officers since taking over. The previous chairman, other members of the Joint Chiefs, combatant commanders, and other commanders. The rationale for me has been straightforward. It's nearly impossible to change a culture with the same people who helped create or even benefited from that culture, even if that culture was created by a previous president and previous secretary. My approach has been simple. When in doubt, assess the situation, follow your gut, and if it's the best for the military, make a change.
I'm going to leave it there because it goes on for another couple of minutes, and this is about it. But my feeling is, could we interchange military for law enforcement in this country?
Yes.
Yeah, and listen, a lot of that, Tom, I like I said before, there's no doubt appearance matters, right? And it speaks to discipline, and it speaks to commitment. I can tell you that every time I got promoted, that I was going back out into the street, immediately I wanted to make sure that I looked a certain way. So I all of that is acceptable. The only thing that worries me a little bit from that is simply what I mentioned before is, man, I don't want anyone, I don't care who you are or what your politics are. I don't want a certain level of rigidness. You always have to have an open mind to, like I said, this guy is a, military strategist that's got their shit together and has been in the military 25 years, combat wounded veteran and all, but they can't do fucking 3 pull-ups. I don't give a shit. I want the best leaders to be available to lead our troops. If Pete Hegseth says, man, of course, I'm not speaking about that. I mean, in general, we can't have an army where you have a bunch of fat asses. Man, I'm okay with that. Right? If that's the message, I'm okay with it. Otherwise, I think it's important to make sure we have the best people in the best positions, who has the best skill set, and make sure we're able to use those people to the best of their capabilities.
Yep. Agreed. And look, the other thing I like that you said is he's going to take the handcuffs off the leaders at all different levels to lead. You can't have people afraid to lead at the lower levels because they're afraid it might affect their career progression or get them in trouble. Leaders need to lead. Make a decision and own it.
100%. Micromanagement is a killer of morale.
So Pete and I talked on the pre-show before you jumped on, Chief, for in the studio in the green room. I went through a process. I came on the job fit. Probably my first 10 years I was fit. And then I lost it when I went into the detective squad. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is obvious because I worked nonstop for like 14 hours a day. The other was we were eating horrible food, Chinese food, pizza, and then I neglected everything in my life other than investigations. And I ballooned up. And then my last 2 years, I got back into shape. I will say, if they implemented standards and said, you will do this or else, I would have done it. I just would have did it because I was like, I love the job so much. I want to perform. And yeah, thank you for giving me the nudge that I need to stay in shape. So I'm a big proponent of health and fitness standards to that extent. I get what you're saying, Chief, about getting later in the years, but like, what do you look like in uniform when you're really buttoned up and tight? And then what does the rookie or the new soldier look like at 20, 21, 18 even, when he's looking at those guys and they're out of shape, the Mark Millies, like Pete said. So I know it's a tough call, and I'm with you. Like, if there's some strategist sitting in some desk and like really brilliant, but like there's
you got to strike a balance.
Culture you got to put out there.
You got to strike a balance, though.
Yeah, there's got to be a balance. And listen, but Tommy, just to be clear, I'm not speaking about how you look. Right. I think you have to look sharp. You're a general. You have to look sharp. That's not what I'm speaking about. What I'm speaking about is, man, you run in the morning, you eat right, you take care of yourself so you can look sharp. But you can't do pull-ups.
Yeah, pull-ups. At a certain age, man, they're hard, man. You're
listen.
Well, let me ask you this,
as an
Chief.
investigator, right? As an investigator, it takes a lot of years to learn your craft, right? To learn how to speak to people, to learn to pick up all these different cues. That takes time. It takes time,
Yeah.
So we gotta give that value.
Yeah, right, for sure. So let me ask you this: from the chief's perspective, running the whole department, do you ever put out an edict that says, "I want this," knowing that it's really strict, but there'll be some comeback on it, and like you just want to send a message of a culture, like we need to perform like this, knowing that there'll be some backtracking on it. Man, but you have to come out hard. You have to come out hard.
So for me, I always, and listen, I'm just a person, right? Like you guys, and we're not always going to get it right, but I can tell you that I would always try to measure it this way. First, what is best for the city of Miami? What's best for the city of Miami? Yep. Secondly, what is best for my agency, the police department? And then lastly, what's best for me? I would try, right, to think of it. Sometimes I'd fail, right? But even if I knew it was going to be received negatively, but I know that this is what's best for the city as a whole, I felt like it was my responsibility. I took that job, understanding sometimes I was going to make decisions that were not going to be popular. And I accepted that. So city first, if it doesn't affect the city in any kind of way, how does it affect the agency? Even if I didn't like it, but I think this is what's best for the agency, that's what I was going to do. And then lastly, how does it affect me personally? That was my last consideration. If I thought, man, this is going to go over as a fart in church, but, well, listen, firing someone, I'll make it really simple. I didn't like doing that. I did it myself, by the way. I wouldn't have HR or the chief of administration or other people. If somebody had to wield an axe, I was wielding it. I was the one, when I was the chief, that would call you in and tell you, pack up your shit, you got to go. You're fired. That would be me. I did it. I didn't put that on somebody else. I didn't like it, but if that's what was best, that's what I was going to do.
So let me jump in here, Pete, and I'll defer back to you. I am so happy to hear that. Customer, so that's business or police, the community. That's the community. Company, that's my company I work for or the agency I work for. The only thing I'm going to insert different than you, Chief, is team. So like my little unit and then myself. So I was taught customer, company, team, self, which I think you're saying the same exact thing, same hierarchy. We're on the same page. I'm getting goosebumps right now. I love it. That's what really makes me happy. Pete, how did you guys do that in the ATF?
Yeah, it depended on
or the good ones, not all the.
Yeah, look, I always tried to put obviously the mission first. I mean, we didn't really have a community, so to speak. I mean, the gun dealers to some degree, because we didn't patrol communities. We had such a vast area, so it was mission, people, myself. And look, the other thing I always realize is the higher you move up in an organization, the more eyes are on you. So look, you as a group supervisor, it's not that hard. It's not easy. It's not that hard though to try to keep 10 or 14 people happy. When you're an ASAC and you have 30, 40 people under you, it's a little bit harder. When you're a SAC and you have, maybe 150, 200 people, it's even harder. And you're not going to be able to keep everybody happy, but you always have to try to do what's in the best interest of the people and balance that with the mission. Again, we didn't have necessarily a community per se that we serve. We didn't do patrol. We were investigators. So it's a little bit different. But no, man, one thing I'll say is I always had deep, deep respect for cops that go out there and were good cops and for leaders that go out there and lead. And look, whether you get it perfect all the time or not, if you're putting your heart into it and doing your best, you have my respect.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep.
All right.
All right. So any last thoughts? I mean, we're 2 hours and 6 minutes in. We're 300 live viewers. So thanks for everybody for coming in. Please subscribe and share. Really appreciate everybody. Any final thoughts? You want to guys go around and then we'll do some house cleaning on the end?
No, for me, I appreciate you guys having me on, man. I really do. I appreciate what you do. I like that you're bringing on all these different kinds of people to, speak about these things that are important, because sometimes, especially the public, won't understand unless they hear us speaking about it this way, what it is that, public servants go through, what they live, how they live, why they live. And so I appreciate you guys for doing it.
George, good seeing you, brother. I hope our paths cross in person soon. It's been a while in person. I know we've had some conversations. Yeah. Actually, I think the last time was a year ago today.
That's right.
The Flioa dinner last year was down in Miami a year ago today.
Yes, so sir.
We're overdue for a beer, but much respect and much love for you, brother, as always.
Thank you, Pete.
So Chief, to your comments in departing on the podcast, I hope in 14 episodes so far, and hopefully we keep going for as long as Pete and I have the stamina for it, because there's not a penny to be made. We're just never going to hit that place. But that being said, we're having fun. We're enjoying the conversation. We're sending the message we feel needs to be sent. I think every single one of the 14 guests that we've had so far has been that we all care about the community. That they think for some reason, some people have told the communities we don't care about them and that we're not compassionate. I can be the most compassionate and the hardest cop that needs to take care of business. And that's not just me. I think I speak for most of the cops. I can be compassionate and hard in taking care of business and putting handcuffs on really bad people at the same time. I think I can do that. And I think most of us can. All the men and women that have done this job, I think they all do that by far and large. So thank you for that message that you just sent. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, so a little housekeeping. So this channel, Chief, if you're not familiar, we have the Executive Perspective. That's a retired chief from Special Operations Division of the NYPD and Inspector Ron Layson, multiple commands in the NYPD. They provide an executive's perspective on the NYPD in New York City. So there's a fire sale now. Our current mayor just stepped out. And what does that mean? And what is the potential new mayor, whoever that may be? There's a person leading in the polls, but could somebody be an underdog? We'll see from them coming up in the next couple of months. But Ron and Rob are going to talk about that tomorrow. And then at 1:05 on Thursday is the Sal Greco show every Tuesday and Thursday. So this coming Thursday, we got the Sal Greco show. And I don't have the promo for tomorrow morning, 8:05. That will be Eric, Dim, John McCarry, and Marlon Bethel on the Finest Unfiltered. So anything, if you want to follow us, the Finest Unfiltered is the channel. And then for the Ten-Four Tavern, X, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook.
Right on.
Any final thoughts?
Good to see you guys.
Seeing you, gentlemen. Good
Really appreciate it, Chief. I say, let's finish this up. Chief, you just got back from France. You were in Bordeaux.
Yes, sir.
Left bank or right bank or both?
Both. We did both. We wanted to drink all the wine we could. So.
Oh, yeah. So I have an open invitation. Since I live in Central Virginia in Charlottesville, which is the Monticello AVA for wine, I have 20 to 25 vineyards in a 10-mile radius of where I live. I am blessed for that. If we coordinate, you, Pete, myself, our better halves, this town is open to you. I will show you what it's like to be in a rural AVA to drink wine. It's probably not anywhere near as good as the French, but they're making strides here. They've been doing this for 30 years now. And by the way, this is the home of Thomas Jefferson, who brought French vines from France to Virginia, to the USA. The first vines planted are right here in our backyard. So
sounds awesome. I'm down.
We'll see if you come out. So it's an open invitation. Let's coordinate that, and you'd be welcome.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Okay. Pete?
Yeah, sounds good. I never saw a good drink.
All right. But I don't want to interrupt your cruise, Pete. I don't want to interrupt your cruise.
Oh, no,
All right, everybody, I'm going to sign off right now. Goodbye, everybody. Please stay safe. God bless. Pete, you know what to say to everybody? It's your message.
Hey, it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to do nothing about it. If you're in a bad place, talk to somebody. Whether it's
Please
your
call us.
clergy,
Please
friend, call us. Yeah, don't suffer in silence, man.
All right. Gentlemen, stay on. After the wrap up, we'll wrap up the show. All right. Good night, everybody. Be safe.